Today, Randy and I are going to do a little legal minute, and we're going to talk about the HOA addendum and document delivery. This is not a super sexy topic, but it's super important, and it could cost your client or you possibly a lot of money. So we're going to walk through this document, how to fill it out, how to address it if on the listing side and the buy side. So this is it. It's the TREC addendum for property subject to mandatory membership in a property owners association. And we will go to the next slide because it's really small text. I want you guys to actually be able to read this. So first of all, as a Briggs-Freeman best practice, we recommend that you get this filled out with your listing paperwork and that you order the HOA docs and the resale certificate prior to listing. And we're going to walk through why. So first things first, when Randy, you can explain what we're missing basically when you receive this document sometimes.
Okay. Good morning, everyone. Happy Monday. On occasion, this is not from anyone within our BFSIR family, but on occasion we do receive incomplete HOA addendums where it'll only have the name or sometimes there's nothing in there. And, that causes a delay in ordering the documents.
He's talking about this blank right here. That's like, what's the owners association and how do we reach them?
Correct. Yes.
And your seller will have that.
Exactly. Yes. The sellers typically, if they pay it online, if they could just print out a statement or, something of that nature when you're doing the listing appointment, and then we'll be happy to order those ahead of time. We actually front the cost for your clients.
This is Momentous.
Momentous will front the cost for the resale certificate. And then we'll just seek reimbursement on the closing statement.
So, and we're going to talk through now. So what is the subdivision information? We're going to talk through why that's important. It's basically the current CC&Rs, the declarations, what's the HOA kind of original governing rules, right? And those are recorded in the real property record. So that's one component of what's being delivered. The other component is the resale certificate. And can you explain what's in a typical resale certificate?
So a resale certificate will have transfer fees, working capital, any special assessment information. And so even though, buyers may not require that information, the title company, especially us, Momentous Title, we do require that information. And so we will have to order a resale certificate regardless of which option is checked on this addendum.
So we've had that question recently where an agent was like, well, my client already lives in this subdivision, so they don't really need any of that. And that's true. They might have a copy of the CC&Rs, but they do need an updated resale certificate so they can see if there's any assessments due. Some HOAs have a right of first refusal for other members of the HOA. So the title company is typically going to require that, and the buyer should kind of know what they're getting into, because the management company has to actually put that together so that it's current as of the time of the contract, if that makes sense. It's not just recorded documents like the CC&Rs are and the restrictions. Hopefully that makes sense. If you guys have questions, put it in the chat. So now this paragraph A governs like, when is this document needing to be delivered? Obviously, as a Briggs-Freeman best practice on the listing side, we're hoping that you are gathering it, getting it up front from Momentous and checking this box, and then say the buyer doesn't require delivery of it. We're still going to have to, because then there's no out. And you'll see here in paragraphs 1, 2, and 3, the buyer has a right to terminate if they don't get the documents, or also if they get within 3 days of when they get the documents, in case they read something in there that they don't like. It's kind of an pretty open-ended right to terminate. So that's what when a buyer's agent calls me and they're like, I need to get out of this contract, one of my first questions was, is there an HOA and has it been delivered yet? Because if it hasn't, this is a very easy out. That's why on the listing side, we recommend ordering the documents up front so that the buyer can check this box. Or they can check this box. They have received and approved the information, and they do or do not require an updated resale certificate. And then you're just eliminating the outs that your buyer has. And these are the boxes then sometimes agents ask us to check, like, how long does it take for either the seller or the buyer to order them and have them delivered? And what would you typically say there?
I would say anywhere from 10 to 15 days, depending on the closing date. We actually have a pending contract right now where they selected 15 days However, it's a quick cash close within 10 calendar days. So we contacted the listing agent and said, we're going to have to place a rush on this. This is going to be the additional costs. So just kind of keep that in mind as well when, while you're negotiating.
So, and one thing you guys should be aware of, we talked about this in Legal One. The Texas legislature did pass a bill recently that requires that HOAs, if they have more than 60 units, like place their documents online. Obviously, they can't place the resale certificate online, so it still needs to be ordered. And they're supposed to be delivering these in a more timely manner. That doesn't necessarily mean that's happening. That's why we always say, just get it up front. So I think we can go to the next slide. Then the second half is, paragraphs B, C, and D. And basically, even if the seller delivers them upfront and the buyer has received, if over the course of the contract, if there's any material changes in the subdivision information, if the HOA gets sued, if there's an assessment, seller has to give notice to the buyer, and that gives buyer the right to terminate the contract. Whether any of the information provided wasn't true, or if there's a material adverse change, right? If there's a huge assessment or there's a lawsuit or something like that. So you just need to be aware that that's in there. If you have a listing and something changes, your seller has to disclose it to the buyer. And then this next paragraph C is super important. So it says, this is a provision that lets the title company know who's paying what transfer fees. This does not deal with like the prorated fees that everyone's going to agree to. Some associations charge a specific fee to transfer. And as a listing agent, you should know what this fee is so that, a buyer's agent, if they don't know, they're just going to write in $100 or $200. But sometimes they can get pretty pricey. You have a good example of this.
I do. Recently, we've closed a couple of condos, and one here at the Vendome we closed last week, where the transfer fees were up to $15,000. It was like $14,000 and some change. And the listing agent did a wonderful job of doing his homework and negotiated it to where the buyer was covering those costs. Another one that we closed in the area a couple of weeks ago is there were special assessments that were forthcoming. They weren't a part of the resale certificate, but again, because the agent did their homework, they knew it was, forthcoming, and the seller actually offered to cover the special assessments for 24 and 25, on behalf of the buyer. And so we knew this information up front, and they indicated the amounts in section C.
So I think the punchline here is that on the listing side, you just need to be aware of what number that this is. And that's something that the HOA management company will be able to tell you. You just don't want to let a buyer write in a low number, because that could have been a very pricey closing cost for the seller if our Briggs Freeman listing agent hadn't done their homework up front. And then the last one is, this one says that the seller authorizes the homeowners association to release this information if requested by any party. And if the buyer isn't requiring, if they've checked that box and they don't require subdivision information or an updated resale certificate, but the title company might, then someone has to pay for it. And the fee for an updated resale certificate on that recent, legislation a couple years ago is it's capped at $75. So it's not hugely expensive to have the resale certificate updated. And how long do those typically last? If we ordered it during the listing period and it needed to be revived, how long do those last?
Generally anywhere from 60 to 90 days. And then certain HOAs will provide a complimentary update. If they charge, we will contact you to let you know how much the update is prior to ordering.
Okay. Awesome. Thank you. Okay. And then the last thing, this is just a little notice, is that, there are some things that homeowners in an association can't fix, and it's the responsibility of the association. And this is just a notice to buyers, letting them know that. So that's all we got. Hopefully that was helpful. This is not a super fun document, but it is important, like we said, because it can be very costly for the seller if you don't know what you're doing. Okay. Thanks, guys. Appreciate it.
Thank you all.